Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest for the second time, where we're looking at their take on the game and leadership aspect of the podcast. Who knows what we might find out, because we all look at this differently, and it's always so interesting to see what the guests have in store for me when I turn up, because we never plan this in advance. So I hope you're as excited as me. Let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back Finlay McArthur, who we just had a little pre-chat and just dropped in there that he's the author of 4 books already that I had no idea. So come on, Finn, spill a little bit about your 4 books.
Well, as actually years ago, I was working with a ladies' breast cancer charity and doing some coaching and psychotherapy with the poor ladies post and pre-treatment, etc. And I started writing some sort of fact sheets for them about how they can use some of the positivity, just give them some ideas and some exercises to do, mindful exercises to do, that type of thing. And I did, I don't know, about 10 of these, and someone said, "Oh, do you know what? You can put those in the book." So I thought, not a bad idea. So a few years later, I sat down one afternoon and came up with my first book, which is called Get Out of Your Way. And it's you want to call it a self-help book, kind of, but it's more of a helping people to sort of get the best out of themselves by looking at things like self-sabotage and how we use unconscious behavior, etc., to run our lives. And of course, a lot of it of what we do during our life is pre-programmed into us at a very early age. So it's getting people to look at themselves in a different way. So that was that one. The second one was called, because it led on to the second one, of course, is called The Human Whisperer. Now, one of the things I do is I love nature. I love studying nature, being out in nature. And I've got lots of friends that are into spiritualism and got me into it, and having a look at the bigger picture, because I like looking at the bigger picture. I don't like being told what to do. So I like to look at the bigger picture. So the second book is called Human Whisperer. So again, it's more about personal development, but bringing in some kind of sort of spiritual, holistic aspects to it as well. And the third book is called The Human Mind, The Dominion of Change. And that's a rant, basically. That's the way best I describe it. It's me ranting on for about 300 pages about how we're using the same mindset that we had 1,000 years ago. And isn't it about time that we changed how we think about the world around us and how we interact with that world to sort of bring change to individuals and to us globally, because I think it's about time, especially after the pandemic. I thought it was about time that we started looking at ourselves in a slightly different way. So those are the 3 books. The 4th book is based on the diaries of my wife's great-grandfather, who was at Gallipoli. And one of my wife's cousins found that he used to keep a diary. And for some reason, the diary ended up at the Imperial War Museum. So we managed to get a copy of it. So we turned that into just a short book about it's called A.W. Stone, My Gallipoli, and it's about his diary through 6 months during the Gallipoli campaign, because he was a merchant seaman from the sea point of view, because most of it's from the land. So that's all published as well. So those are the 4 books, yeah.
Goodness me, that's absolutely fascinating. Well, I implore our listeners to go have an investigation of those 4 books, and 4 very different takes and different sort of stages in your journey as an author, I guess, for each book as well. Especially with that last one being quite a different subject. Fascinating. They're certainly going to be on my reading list As you know, I have a list. I've got a few books behind me. Oh yes,
Yeah.
you can see that one.
Yeah.
About 10 of those that I haven't read out of the 30 or 40 that are on the shelf there.
Wow.
That I need to read first. I've promised myself I must read those first before I buy any more, but then I shall be onto it. So thank you for sharing that, Finn.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I think today let's dig into your take on game and leadership. When I ask you about that, what does that bring up for you?
Well, one of the things I probably we haven't talked about, mentioned, and here we go again. But I was very fortunate for years to go to work with a Premiership football club. I can't say which one because of contractual rights, but that was an amazing journey for me. It was only for a few months on the part of the coaching team, literally coaching team, not the. I've got two left feet, but the mindset coaching. But that was fascinating to see how the dynamics of a football team, especially on a pitch, how a team gels, manages itself, was not a million miles away from what we would do in an organisation, especially at sort of senior level when senior teams are meeting and getting together. So, I mean, one of the things that came to mind is performance, because in a football team you have to perform. Everyone in that team has to perform. You've got 11 players out on the pitch and they all have to perform. They all have to look out for each other. They all have to know whose jobs what, when to break, when to pull back, when to etc. Which position they're all going to be in. It's actually quite complex when when I was at school, you just booted it down the field and hoped that it reached one of your players on the same team. But quite surprised when it's a little bit more complex than that. But anyway,
your experience is funnily enough more complicated than mine of football, actually.
Yeah, I just saw a red shirt. I thought, great, booted it in his general direction and hoped that he would pick it up. But no, it's found out a little bit more, as I say, a little bit more involved. But one of the things it was great, and this particular manager that was managing this particular team had a real team player emphasis with his team. No particular one player was more important than the others. And when he joined the club, it was very much a case of the team was built around 2 or 3 players, and he stripped that all the way back. And he said, right, no player is as important as the other. Even the changing room, he changed the changing room around, so it was more of a circular changing room than like a square one, because these top 3 players before he came along had the back, that's where they were. But he said, no one's more important. So he changed the changing room to more of a semicircular. And I really liked his approach. But it was very interesting where taking that idea from the pitch into an organization with regards to looking at how the organization structures itself. And I was very fortunate again when I came back from that to work with a very large organization involved with parcels, not the red one, I haven't said, but another one. But and how how that football mix, and you may think when you go through life that sometimes things happen for a reason, but I think this particular time it did, because this particular organization fitted what this football team that I was working with fitted really well, and the fact that the board really didn't know what the others did. And when he said to them, kind of, for instance, okay, who's in charge of personal development? Yeah, well, that'd be Karen. Okay, great. So what's Karen say? Oh, I don't have to ask her. Okay, so what's Karen's policy? How does Karen, I don't know, should we get her in? Well, you don't have any idea about what Karen does. Well, yeah, she manages this, but you don't know what she manages. You don't actually know what Karen does. She's head of HR, but you have no idea. Yeah, well, that's her department to run, and she reports to me what's going on, and that's fine. And I thought, well, then how can you manage Karen if you don't know what Karen is specifically doing? and how does that fit into the larger organization? So therefore there's a dysfunction. And it's a bit like a striker saying, well, I know the defenders do something, not 100% sure what they do, protect the goal or do something, I'm not quite sure exactly what it is. And it's the same kind of thing. You would never have that on a football pitch. The striker will know what defenders do, because when there's a corner, everyone moves back to protect the goal, to defend. And then once the ball gets released, they all move into their positions again. And I thought, well, this is the same as a boardroom. Why don't people, this particular company, why don't they know what each other are doing? So I said, okay, all right, we'll speak to Karen in a moment then. So I said, what about operationally wise? Who looks after the operation? He said, what do you mean operation? I said, well, running the business, who looks after it, comes up with strategies. Oh, well, yeah, well, that'd be Bob. Great. And Bob does, well, I don't know, speak to Bob. So I get Bob in as well. I'm thinking, and this is
a pattern forming here, Finn.
Yeah. But I'm thinking, well, there's 4 senior guys here, boardroom guys sitting here and kind of not realizing what people do, per se. So the game, as this particular episode is called, was really to sort of bring that team dynamics back into the boardroom and thinking, right, let's look at the organization as a whole, because we need to look at this. So what we did, we went straight back to basics again. So we got a flip chart, technology and some pens, color pens, of course. And we started with the goalkeeper, which I saw as a board, because the board have to protect the organization. So I said, right, so you're the goalkeeper. Now let's look at the different teams. And we actually broke it out like a football team, just so they could see that what they were doing. And so the defense, so they were the goalkeeper. Then we had Bob and Mary and Jane and whoever it was doing the different functions, the direct reports. Then their direct reports, so and so and so and so and so forth. But kind of resonated with them, and we managed to get them to understand that you have to understand what each part of the team does. There's no point saying, "Oh, we've employed Jane to do that, so let's allow Jane to do it." No, you have to know what Jane's doing. How do you know what Jane's doing? So it's very interesting, and unfortunately that isn't just a one-off. Many organizations that I've been involved with still have that, I don't know, we've employed whoever it is to do that job. Well, that's up to them. If they have a problem, they let us know. Right, okay. But then that goes back to what my dad was saying, we were discussing the previous podcast, is leading from the front. Who's actually leading? And no one, to be quite honest. So so bringing this episode into game, it very much was a case of bringing a physical game into an organization and breaking that down into an organizational look at where do you fit in the pitch, or where do you fit within the business. And it seemed to fit quite well.
Thank you for sharing that story, Finn. And I think there's a big difference between taking a strategic decision and bringing in people with the strengths for the HR area, for example, and for the operations area and for the finances area, bringing those strong leaders in to fill the gaps of knowledge that you don't have. That's great, and that's great leadership, but not having an understanding of what each area of your business is doing. So if I think about this as an entrepreneur, and in my business, I have to know everything about everything. Who knew I had to be the HR director, the IT professional, and the finance director, and all the rest of it in my own business? But that's how it works when you first start. And if you apply that to the larger organizations that we're talking about, it makes sense that having an understanding of what's going on in your business allows you to make those better and more informed decisions for how you move that business forwards for growth and success.
Exactly. And it's like we discussed before, it's the basics that, I don't know, seem to be missing in a lot of organizations these days. It's I'm not a lover of IT, as and I've got several people much younger than me, that will help me with setting up my telephone, because I'm just not that mindseted. But I do think that a lot of technology now is taking away this leadership from people who actually have to make these decisions, because it's, you know, I was listening to a TED talk the other day, and they talked about how organizations use algorithms now to come up with a different set of strategic sort of goals or whatever it is they want to deal with. And I'm thinking, algorithms, like, oh yeah, you know, we put all these different scenarios into the computer, and it comes up with these 3 to 4 different ways. I'm thinking, well, yeah, but I get that, but surely it's only as good as the information you're putting in. Yeah, but we, you know, we collate all that, we do an analysis, and we do this, and we collect, and we do it, but we put it all in the computer. Why don't you just sit around the table and talk about it then? What's the computer have to come up with? And it's a shame, because I think a lot of not just organizations, but I think a lot of where we are is being lost now by data analysts, data. And I'm going to say something which is going to, but things like Power BI, which I know is a fundamental tool for people to use in organizations now, and which is great, because it gives an overall indication of what isn't working, where we need to, but it's data, you know.
And it is only as good as what's put in.
And it's only as good as
so if the user isn't putting in up-to-date information at the front end, the report that you get out at the back end is no good to anyone if it's not up to date. So I completely get that. But you know what you made me think of just then is that we're losing that art of conversation, that art of scenario planning ourselves, and that art of what's possible, and that creativity is being stunted. You know, all of those things. If you're turning to AI to give you those different scenarios, don't get me wrong, there is a place for it. But
totally.
it's not with me and my team, certainly not at the moment, unless something drastically changed overnight. You know, I talked to you before we sort of came onto the podcast about how much I'm enjoying the podcast, because it gives me that wonderful opportunity to have fantastic, fascinating conversations with people just like you, Finn. You know, to when we don't get time to do that on a daily basis, because there's pressure to deliver this, pressure to deliver that, a deadline for this, a deadline for that. You know, take time for yourselves to have a think about what next meeting you're going into, what are the things you're going to be facing in that meeting, what do you need the outcomes to be, so that you can share those into the conversation, and you can bring others in and ask them to contribute the same. You'll have fascinating conversations. And I'm not saying everybody and every organization has lost that ability, but there is certainly less conversation as more technology comes in. And I suppose I'm just thinking about that remote team as well. You know, the fact that you're not bumping into each other at the coffee maker, or you're not leaning over and going, oh, Finn, I've got this thing I'm just working on over here. Can you just tell me what you think? I can't do that, because you're way down on wherever you are, and I'm way up here in Cheshire. So, you know, it's not possible. And you have to work extra hard when the team is virtual, in that sense as well.
You do, and you hit the nail spot on, I think, because it is that isolation I think people struggle with, and it is that water coolers, you coffee moment chats, when you walk in and you see someone displaying some negative body language, and you know, so what's up? Oh, nothing. Oh, what's up? You know, you know, and within 10 minutes you can talk to someone, because that's what it's about. People don't have that luxury now, and let's face it, with, as you quite rightly say, you know, you are isolated, the pressure is on, because you haven't got that quick, you know, oh, Susan, what do you reckon on this? Have a quick look, or Can I run this by you? You don't have that so much now. You have to dial in. Someone available. Yeah, great, fantastic. It's not the same. And it's a shame, because I do think it's now pulling away. And as you quite rightly say, there is a place for IT, and I totally get that 100%. But when it comes to people, you have to manage people with people. It's no good using algorithms and things like dysfunctional teams, team dynamics, blah blah blahs. It's another example, Paul, just very quickly. So I was by the way, I'm a coach. I'm not an executive coach. I'm not a well-being coach. I'm a coach, because there's far too many titles out there about what people are. So I coach. So I just happened to be in an organization, and someone asked me to do some coaching on a particular individual. Very capable. This is what I was told. Very capable, looked good on paper, ticked all the boxes that we needed, but just isn't performing. Okay, great, fine. Alarm bells are going off already. What do you mean looks good on paper and ticked all the boxes? Okay, did you actually speak to this person before they started? Yeah, we had we had a half an hour's catch up, but the HR people said, yeah, seemed to be the right person for the. Okay, fine. So I sat down with this particular person. How can I help you? Oh, well, I don't know. I just don't seem to be fitting in. Okay, why aren't you fitting in? Well, at this organization I did this, and my previous organization I did that, and I'm capable of doing this, and I've done that, and whoa, hang on, let's stop. Okay, this I don't care what you've done. Who are you as a person? Oh, well, I bought this business in. No, just stop. Who are you as a person? And it took 4 or 5 attempts before they actually said, well, what do you mean? Who are you as a person? Tell me about you. What do you likes? What do you dislikes? What makes you angry? What makes you sad? What gets you up in the morning? Oh, and his demeanor completely changed, and we had a wonderful chat for an hour or so. And it transpired that he needed a job. He ticked all the boxes that they thought the organisation needed. It was a completely wrong fit. Okay, fine. So went back to stakeholders, explained the situation, keeping confidentiality, obviously, but just said, have you actually spoken to this person? Well, yeah. And I said, no, you've actually spoken to this person. What have you done during your interview process that tells you this person is that right for that particular job? Well, he ticked it. Yes, exactly. He ticked all the boxes. What did you, when you spoke to him in the interview, what did you actually ask him? Oh, hang on. I think we've got the list of questions here somewhere. And I'm thinking, there's no, again, going back to what you said, like, there's no one-on-one. Well, what did you ask him? What did anyone bother to ask him what his likes are, what his dislikes are? What inspires him, what motivates him, or, well, I don't know. Did we ask him that? Don't know. What did you ask him that? No. Well, no, don't say we did. No, but he looked good on paper. That okay, great. And unfortunately, and this is head of HR on quite a large organisation. And that's where unfortunately IT is coming in. We're losing that interaction. As it happens,
that human aspect. Yeah,
it is that human aspect. I was very pleased at the end of that particular scenario, because he did stay with the organisation, but they found another job that actually fitted his identity, who he is, his values, his beliefs, etc., and he's still there, I believe, but doing a grand job. Who else they got in to fill that position? I don't. Probably someone else who ticked the box and looked good on paper, probably.
Yes. Did they learn from their experience, relying a bit more on ticking boxes rather than bringing out truly the values, the benefits that this person's going to bring to the table and what they need as well? Because we all know that when we're going for interviews for roles, it's as much about us interviewing them now as it is about them interviewing us. So understanding that we have that opportunity to ask the questions and put on the table the things that we need to make sure we can deliver our best work if we're successful in the role.
Exactly. And I think at this point, we've probably come right back to the beginning again. When I was mentioning this particular football team, because when I was there, they were interviewing for some new players, or actually approaching some new players. But it was fascinating just to watch. It was a case of, what is that player doing now? What are they capable of doing? Will they fit into the club? What development points do they possibly need, if any? Which position are they better fitted in? They're looking at the whole thing. Then they bring the player in, they talk to him, they try him out before they sign the dotted line. Can he fit that position? Can he do this? How's he going to fit in the club? Does he get the attitude of the club? Because I was fascinated to find out that all the clubs have completely different atmospheres and beliefs and values as a club. But they go through this whole thing before they say, yeah, right, they're going to spend 30 million on a play. You need to know all that. But they take time to find these things out. They're not doing an algorithm tick box exercise. Oh, it looks good on paper. I saw him playing the other day. Yeah, it looks all right. Great. He can kick a ball. Fantastic. Let's sign him up. Let's give him his 30 million. It would never happen. Because if he fails, the team fails. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing all of that, Finn. And I will refer everybody back to David Charlton that has just done with episodes 30, I'm just trying to remember now the numbers, 37, 38 and 39 with me. So his last episode was released this Tuesday, just gone. And, he's a sports psychologist and works with high level, Premier League teams in that sense as well. So what you've just shared there will certainly be making sense to him, and it's a lovely synergy with some of the stuff that he shared. So I encourage the listeners, if you haven't listened already, to go back and have a listen to David's episodes. But absolutely fascinating, Finn. I love talking to all my guests, especially on the game episode, because, again, whilst somebody else has mentioned high performing teams and that sort of back and forth between sport analogies and corporate kind of teams in the workplace and that more traditional leadership, I suppose, as we think about it, it's not the same take. You're all bringing some unique, going back to what we talked about in your last episode, that unique lens that we bring to our world and our version of the world. So absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
No problem at all. And we're lucky enough to be able to welcome you back for a third and final episode next week. So I really look forward to talking to you then. In the meantime, have a great week, Finn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Likewise. Take care of yourself. Speak to you soon.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I always think the game episode is one of my favourites because we get a real insight to our guests' take on their ideas of how games and leadership fit together. Every one of them is different, and just when I think there isn't another take that we haven't thought of or covered, one of our guests comes up with something totally different and unique. It's really exciting. Look, now it's your turn. See what you think, see what resonated with you most, and as always, I encourage you to reflect on what you've heard and see what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and this is Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I really look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.